Bert, in trying to discern what is our consciousness about, there are different approaches. We can try to be first-person internal. We can do it from a behavioral point of view. Computer scientists have had an approach to try to model the mind. Some are very aggressive and say that we can do everything the human brain does, including reproduce consciousness, as long as we have enough computing power. You've thought very deeply about the philosophical implications of artificial intelligence. How do you see the situation today?
Well, consciousness up to recently has been, I think, wisely left out of the work of the people in AI, starting way back with Newell and Simon and John McCarthy, who named artificial intelligence. They always said they were trying to make something that behaved intelligently. Within that, there was a disagreement between the ones who thought that they were doing psychological theory. They wanted it to behave intelligently the way we did. And those are Newell and Simon people and Carnegie Mellon people and Minsky people at MIT, who said, well, we don't care if it's the way people do it. We want it to get the results that people
kind of a behaviorist point of view.
But they're all both ways are behaviorist, except that one is even more behaviorist. But neither one of them needs consciousness in it. Because when Newell and Simon say do it the way people do, they mean using algorithms unconsciously, and it turns out to be that we're all, in their jargon, physical symbol systems, minds and computers, and there's no place in physical symbol systems for any talk about consciousness. And it doesn't get much better, closer to consciousness with the next stage, which is the interesting stage where MIT is now, where they make robots and insect-like things, and the insect-like things take account of the environment, but they're not conscious of the environment. They've got cameras and they got pictures of the environment, and they bump into things. They've got sensors, and by that they can get around in the world, and they can make robot-like vacuum cleaners, which is what the head of the AI lab has quit doing, so that he can go run his company to make little things that run around and dust the floor. But that they aren't, again, they're not trying to get consciousness. It gets more interesting when they need to get learning. Learning's always been a big problem for AI. They've got no good account of learning in the old symbolic AI, and neither has Rodney Brooks, the robot guy at MIT. He doesn't, and he knows it, and he doesn't care. His insects don't learn, and he's making insects. There was a moment in which Rodney Brooks and Daniel Dennett believed that they could make something called COG, which was going to go directly from insects to a human-like something which you could talk to and which had emotions and so forth. It was absolutely a moment of insanity. COG is now already a dead end because they, again, didn't try to, they were doing this behaviorist thing where it was getting harder and harder to do that because it looked like you needed to have some kind of experience of the world in order to store your knowledge of the world by seeing how the world has changed. And once that's how the learnings, that would be better than learning a lot of beliefs, which is what they failed so utterly. It would be more like how we do it. Namely, the world looks different to us the more we learn about it, and we store what we learn about it in the way it looks to us. But looks to us as a conscious sort of thing. And why should we think using computers we're ever going to get to the way anything looks to us, this inner or perspective?
Some of these scientists then would use the fact of exactly what you're saying about AI to show that consciousness, our consciousness, is an illusion, because you cannot represent it in a computer in that same way, that you are representing the behaviors and the intelligence, assuming that would all become human-like, that perhaps that indicates that what we think is our consciousness is really an illusion, doesn't exist.
Well, I think that's just a really extreme, hopeless position. I have nothing to say about it. I mean, it seems, I agree with John Searle. I mean, we're conscious, and that's sort of if anything is clear and obvious to us, that is, and if science can't account for it, we're not going to take it back and say we're not conscious because you neuroscientists don't know how to explain it. That's your problem, not our problem. But there is another move which I want to say something about, which is that now that computers are getting so powerful that pretty soon there will be as many bits processing per second as there are bits in the brain. And since the brain can produce consciousness, then a computer that has that many billion processors doing that many millions of operations per second ought to be able to do it too once we see how the brain does it.
And it's also going to be, it's not just billions, it's 10 to the 20th power. That would be 100 billion billion. It could be, it might be a billion times more than the human brain at some point in this century.
Okay, and my question to such people is, why in the world would one think that just by putting in more and more computer power, you're getting any nearer consciousness? The whole history of AI has been promises that once we get more computer power, we'll do it better. The old AI people were saying it, the animats people are saying it, the people who want to make COG said it. And the illusion is the following. They think, well, the brain does it, and it's got millions and millions, billions and billions of neurons, and so when we have billions and billions of neurons, we'll do it something like the way the brain does it.
And what's wrong with that argument?
Because it's a gigantic fallacy. The brain is doing it at several milliseconds per processing. The brain can't process billions and billions of bits in millionths of a second the way these supercomputers are going to be able to do it. So whatever the brain is doing to produce consciousness can't possibly be what these super things are going to do to produce consciousness. The brain, whatever, we don't have any idea how the brain's doing it, but one thing I think we can be sure about, the brain is not doing it by processing billions and billions of neural impulses that just wouldn't work. So the only example that these people have of how processing produces consciousness is not an example of how their kind of processing produces consciousness. So why should we believe that their kind of computing would produce consciousness? There's no reason whatsoever. There's just more and more of the same stuff going on. Why at some point that stuff should become conscious and have a point of view on the world, there's no reason why it should, except they say, well, the brain did, and that's not a reason.
One reason could be the concept of critical mass, that at some point you generate a different order of being, an emergent phenomena.
Okay, you can say that. It's sheer bluff. I mean, there's no reason from anything that we know about brains or computers or critical masses or tipping points or anything else that justifies the thought that we'll go from third person to first person at some crucial point. And always in the background is the thought, well, the brain did it. But that's irrelevant. I just want to keep saying the brain didn't do it by reaching a critical mass. Not at all. The brain has done it in some evolutionary way, and we better spend our time not imagining what's going to happen when we reach critical mass, about which we know nothing, absolutely nothing. We better do neuroscience and see if we can figure out how the brain does it operating at a snail's pace.